Wandering Tales, everybody. My name is Whitney. We got Marley putting his big head right in front of the camera. Got Nidra over here, Boo Boo here, and this is Shunka. So today we are going to be talking about pet sitting. March 3rd through the 9th is Professional Pet Sitters Week, and so we are going to be talking about different options you have to have somebody watch your pet and kind of things to watch out for. I'm also going to be doing a story time, a couple incidences where things didn't go so well while I was having somebody watch my pets. So let's go ahead and get into it. Obviously, if we could, we would take our pets with us wherever we went. That's not always possible, especially if you have a large crew like I do. What are you doing, Marley? You are being silly. Yes, you are. Yes. He's a silly boy. But, so, even if you don't travel a whole lot, I know a lot of pet parents, especially ones that have elderly pets or pets with special needs, choose not to travel. You still never know when you might need to leave town for a family emergency, or things like accidents or illnesses happen. You might end up in the hospital. So it is really important that you have a plan in place. And so should something happen, should you need to leave town, especially, if you're a smaller family or single, it's really important that you have a plan in place. So let's go ahead and get into it. First off, the most ideal situation is to have somebody you know and trust, a family member. They're not necessarily a professional, but they're willing to come stay at your house and take care of your pets. This is going to be the least stressful on your pets because, one, they're in their familiar environment that they know. Two, they often know the person you're having watch them because it's a friend or family member that they probably met. And also, their routine is going to be the most similar to how it is when you're home. If you're having somebody stay at your house, most of the time, they'll have work or school like you would normally have, and then they would come and spend the evening hours and the night taking care of your pets. And so that's going to make your pets the most happy and the least stressed overall. Obviously, that's not always feasible, especially if a lot of your family and friends have their own pets. And so the next option would be to have them come and check on your pets several times throughout the day. This still causes the least amount of stress because they're still in their familiar environment. They're still having somebody they know come over and take care of them. But for the majority of the time, they're kind of left to their own devices and their routine is not the same. And so that can cause a little bit of stress. The next option is to take them to a family member or friend's home and have them stay there. Again, there was somebody they know. Nidra, that would be a great option because she goes over to my family members' houses all the time, and so she knows their dogs and everything like that. But that can be a little risky when they don't know the dogs, or if your family member have cats, things like that, and they might not play well together, and so that can be a little bit risky. But like I said, Nidra goes over to their house all the time, so if she needed to go and stay with my family members at their house, that would be perfectly fine. The other dogs, not so much, so that's something to consider as well. But again, they're kind of in a home environment with somebody they know. Their routine's going to be obviously different, and there's going to be most often other critters involved, but that is an option as well. The next thing would be hiring a professional in the capacities I mentioned before. There are some pet sitters that will come and stay at your place. Most of the time they have their own animals, so it can be really hard to find a pet sitter that's willing to do this, but they will come to your place and check on your pets a couple times a day, things like that. That can be risky because you don't know the individual. Your pets don't know them. You don't know if they are truly a professional or if they're just trying to make money, and they're not providing the best care for your animals, and they don't really know what they're doing. So that can kind of be scary, and plus you're trusting them to come into your home. The other option is to have them go. There's a lot of in-home pet sitting, And this can be a good option, but a lot of times we see injuries with that because they most often are watching multiple dogs or they have their own dogs. Um, and so the dogs end up getting into a fight. And again, you don't always know. I've heard stories or seen, that they don't bring the pet in right away after a fight because they're kind of trying to hide it, and then it kind of turns into an infection, and it ends up worse than what it would have been if they had just brought the pet in. And so that's always something to consider as well. There's things like boarding kennels or boarding kennels with a daycare. That's a good option because your dog is boarded, if your dog's friendly anyway, because they're boarded in their own individual kennel overnight and then they get to go play with others during the day. Some kennels have an indoor-outdoor option, and so if you don't trust them to play with other dogs, they don't do well with other dogs, or you're worried about them getting hurt, they still have an outdoor area where they can go and run, or they'll take them out for individual playtime. So it kind of just depends on the facility you find. So definitely something you want to discuss with that facility. Make sure you tour and kind of get an idea of how they're set up and the things that they offer. Another great option, especially if you have an elderly dog or cat or their special needs, is to actually board with your veterinarian. The veterinarian is a good option because they know your pet and their medical history, and they're also able to provide care right away should something happen. A lot of times though, small town vets aren't there overnight, so something could still happen overnight, but that could happen in a boarding facility as well. And so you just never know in that case, because there's not somebody there overnight. But like I said, a veterinary clinic's a great option because they're able to administer medications appropriately, and they know your pet's history, and they can provide care right away. So no matter what choice you go with, make sure you get references, you talk to people, tour the facility, tour the home, or if you're having somebody come into your house, have them come over a couple times and make sure that they're asking questions. They should be asking questions just as much as you are. If they're not, that's kind of a red flag because they need to know, any food allergies your pet might have, any medications they're on, any specific quirks or things related to them. So if they're not asking questions, that's kind of a red flag. And then also make sure you get references from them, people that are willing to talk to you about what experience they had with that specific individual or facility. And also make sure you ask what they would do if there was an emergency. If you're able to have a friend or family, they might not have been able to watch your pet for all the days, but they might be able to come and check in on your pet a couple times throughout the week or whatever that you are gone. That's a great option as well because it's somebody you trust that can come and make sure everything's okay. So whether you have a pet sitter or they're boarding somewhere, just let the pet sitter know or the boarding facility know, hey, my friend or my family of this name, because obviously they're not going to just let anybody, or they shouldn't let anybody come and check on your pet, but make sure that they're aware that this person's going to be coming to check on your pet while you're gone, and make sure they allow that. If they don't allow that, that's kind of a red flag as well. They might allow it in certain time frames, which is understandable. They gotta clean and care for these pets, and so if it's gonna be during a time that they don't allow, that's kind of understandable, but make sure that they do at least allow that, and that's a great option to make sure everything's okay. If you're having an individual pet sitter come to your place and take care of your pets, ask them to send pictures. If it's not going to be too stressful for your pet, you'll know your pet best. Even have them FaceTime, and that way you can see how your pet's doing. And like I said, try to have them come over several times before you leave, if possible. That's, like I said, if it's a family emergency or something like that, this is where doing the legwork comes in. So have them come over and meet with them beforehand a couple times. You can even have them come over while you have a long day away and that way you can kind of see your pet's attitude when you get back. And then same thing with boarding facilities. See if you can do like a day board, and so that way you can leave your pet there for the day and just see how they do. And so that way you can kind of see how they're acting before you're actually leaving town. So that's always a great option. That's pretty much it. I'm going to leave links in the description below. So if you do have any further questions or want to learn more, definitely check the links below. Kind of give you guys a better idea of what to look out for and whatnot. Thank you. Now I'm going to do a couple of different story times. There's 2 different incidences that stand out in my mind. I always have family and friends come and watch my pets while I'm out of town. I have a lot of critters, and so boarding them is not necessarily feasible. And so the first instance was I had gone out of town for my birthday to Colorado, and this was September. And so I lived in a little trailer at the time, and it would get quite stuffy in there, and it would be hot. I did have window units for the air conditioning, but it would still just get really stuffy in there. And so my stepbrother had come and stayed and watched my pets for me, and he had ended up opening the kitchen window. Well, this trailer, I mean, it was really run down, and it didn't have any screens or anything like that. And so I got home, and I didn't see my cat anywhere. Didn't really think about it, because he would often hide a lot. But as the evening kind of wore on, I was searching for him. I was looking, in different hiding spots that I knew he liked to hide, and just nothing. I mean, he was nowhere to be found. And then I noticed the window was open, and I ended up calling my stepbrother. I was like, "Hey, like, did you see Chieftain before you left?" Things like that. And he had just opened the window that day, so it had only been that day. He had been closing it and such. But Chieftain was gone, and at this time he was on a special food for his bladder, because if he wasn't on this food, he would strain and have bloody urine, and it was just super painful for him. And so he was on the special food, and I was just thinking he's not going to have a special food. If he doesn't come home, he's going to be in so much pain. And fortunately, it wasn't a very long drawn out, so I kept searching for him that night. I was outside calling for him. Nothing. The next morning, I get up, and I'm looking for him again. I'm calling for him. Still nothing. I had to go to work, and I'm like just distraught because I can't find my cat, and he's going to have all this pain because he's not on the food he needs to be on. And so I'm still searching for him. I have to go to work, get dressed, get ready for work. As I'm heading out the door, I call for him one more time just to see if maybe anything, and I heard a meow. So he was actually under my trailer, and I'm assuming he had been there all night, but he just wasn't responding to me for whatever reason. So I hear a meow, and then I hear like little ruffling sounds, and then I just see this little face. There was one section of the siding that was like lattice siding, and so there was little holes in it so you could see. And I just see his little face peeking out at me, and I was just so relieved. And so I had to rip off the siding to get him out. Like, I didn't care at that point, so I'm like trying to rip it off, and it wasn't coming, and so I ended up getting it open enough, and I just grabbed him and pulled him out. And I was like smothering him with hugs, and his eyes were so big, and he was just so scared. And I was mad, and I was like, "Don't you ever do this again?" But then I was like so relieved that I found him, and I was just like, "I love you so much." So it was quite dramatic, and I had to text my boss and like, "I'm running late. You lost my cat and found him." And so I ended up going to work, and he was completely fine. I did have to give him a bath. He was a little dirty after being underneath the trailer, so he got a bath. But he was completely fine. So that was very dramatic, and my stepbrother felt so bad. But I didn't really blame him. I mean, it did get really stuffy in that trailer. I would just kind of deal with it. It wasn't that bad. Or, I'd open the door, but I'd be right there so I could make sure the cat didn't get out. And like I said, I appreciated it so much that he watched my critters for me and took care of them, and I didn't blame him. Things do happen, but it was very scary. The next thing that happened was my cousin was watching the dogs, and like, I don't know, I think I had Adeline at that time. Um, but this kind of involved Shuka. So this was after I got married, so I did have Adeline. And so I'm not sure if I had the boys yet. I can't remember when I got them. But regardless, my cousin, I got married and we were going to go on our honeymoon, and so my cousin said she would watch the critters for me, and so she came over and stayed at my place. And she had watched the animals before. I went and visited my mom over Christmas and such, and so she had stayed and watched the animals before. So they were very familiar with her. She was familiar with them, everything like that. Well, for our wedding, we had kind of an autumn theme, and I had gotten a bunch of pumpkins that I had put along the aisle. And so we had all these pumpkins, and so we took them home, and I just threw them all on the couch. Well, we get home, we got home fairly late, but we were ready to be home, and so we decided to just kind of drive through and get home, and let my cousin know we were going to be home that night. And so we just drove through and got home, and she wasn't there anymore. Well, we get home to a huge mess. Not only did they get into the trash, Shulka had decided to eat the pumpkins. So, she literally ate like a whole pumpkin, plus bites out of some other ones, and ended up throwing up everywhere. We get home, there's trash everywhere, pumpkin grossness everywhere, poop. It was just gross. She still loves pumpkin. Like, if there is a pumpkin, she will try to eat it. It's ridiculous, which I love pumpkin too. I'm obsessed with pumpkins, and so I like to get fresh pumpkins and make, pumpkin cheesecake, pumpkin cookies, things like that out of the fresh pumpkin. And they always get little bits of pumpkin. But she literally ate the whole raw pumpkin, seeds and all, and ended up just throwing it up everywhere. So gross. But she thought it was the greatest thing ever, and proceeded after she was done throwing up to try to eat some more. So, and like I said, she'll try to eat pumpkins. So that was kind of frustrating to get home and have a big mess to clean up. But again, just appreciate my cousin for watching them and taking care of them. But I'm sure the majority of it happened. The bulk of that happened that night before we came home, just because we told her we were coming home, so she had gone back to her place, and they were left to their own devices again. But those are the two incidences that stand out in my mind. Fortunately, Shuka was fine, other than throwing up and having a little bit of the runs. She was completely fine after that. And again, my cat I found, and so everything worked out in those situations, but it was kind of scary. So again, just make sure, that one, your pets are microchipped, so if they do get out, Chieftain was microchipped. But fortunately, I found him before he ended up at the shelter. But if he had ended up at the shelter, he was microchipped, so that was a good thing. And then two, don't do like we did, try to make sure anything that they could destroy or eat or that's of value is put up and away, because they do get stressed out and bored, even if you do have somebody there watching them. And so that's really, really important that you make sure you do your part as well to ensure their safety while you're gone. But that's it for today. We'll see you guys next week. Until then, ponder this. In 2018, according to the American Pet Product Association, we spent over $72 billion on our pets. Over $6 billion of that was spent on pet services alone. So as such, you can see that's a big industry. It is really important that you do know where your money is going when it comes to your pets and providing for their care. So again, just make sure that you do your research and you know who is taking care of your pets. We'll see you guys next week. Bye. Bye.